After you, James. Okay, the name of this presentation is about Cincom Smalltalk, where we are now, where we're heading in the future, and some ideas on Smalltalk advocacy, which this is a wonderful group to talk with. So contents again, where we are now with the Cincom products, where we're heading in the future, Smalltalk advocacy, and a little bit about a new product that we're working on called Web Velocity. And it ties into where we're headed and also ties into Smalltalk advocacy, so we'll talk to them about that. So where are we right now? Right now, back 3 months ago, we released 3 new products, or 2 major, one maintenance release. We released VisualWorks 7.6, and we basically coined that as the craftsman developers choice for using Smalltalk. ObjectStudio 8.1, more of a business architect's thinking tool. And we put out a maintenance release of ObjectStudio Classic. We're trying to move customers up to the ObjectStudio 8.1 version, which uses the VisualWorks engine. So what's in VisualWorks 7.6? What are just a few new things that were in it? We significantly revamped the refactoring browsers. There's 2 open source frameworks which we now support officially in the product, and those are of course Seaside and the OR mapping framework called Glor. Andres' work in hashing is in VisualWorks 7.6, so that's a great improvement. There's MySQL support. Our OSX VM is significantly improved, and we have more improvements coming for that. I look around the room and I see the number of Apple computers, and that may be of interest to folks. Some of the past VMs we've had some difficulties on running on the Macintosh. The current one runs pretty well, and again, expect continued improvements on that platform. Hover help, flicker reduction, a number of things. Basically, there's over 60 pages in the release notes, so there's a very substantial and large number of things in the new product. There's some preview things. There's things we brought over when we canceled the widgetry project. There were some things there were some good ideas in that we wanted to keep. So one of those was the grid widget, and that is available right now in preview in VisualWorks 7.6. And grid is kind of in VisualWorks there's the data set and the table. The grid is kind of a consolidated version for doing that kind of layout. I won't go into all we'll just read this off, but so these are some of the new things in VisualWorks 7.6. In ObjectStudio 8.1, one of the biggest significant things is it's the only Vista certified Smalltalk. So we actually had to go through quite a bit to get it certified, including a new installer for the certification. It included some fixes, and both our 2 products, VisualWorks and ObjectStudio, you can use Seaside. Both of them support the Seaside framework. So that's kind of where we are now, a very, very quick snapshot. Where are we headed? Well, if I back up from my position as product manager, I have to think about some of the goals of where we want to go and what we want to accomplish. One of those goals is that I want to move the product forward, but I also want to make sure that our current customers are attended to. And that means both making changes that they want and not making the changes so severe that it causes them distress. So if we do nothing, if we make no improvements, we'll lose customers. If we make radical changes, we'll lose customers. So we want to find that sweet spot in the middle where we can move the product forward, attract attract new people to Smalltalk, and also keep our current community and customer base very happy. So just some ideas about how we plan to do that. We want to keep it compatible where it's reasonable. I say where it's reasonable, we don't want to just force things to be backward compatible where we'd be constraining our forward progress. Change incrementally. Often we want, if we're here and we want to move to here, often the way I often think about it is, okay, you can start with a clean sheet of paper and build your new thing. Well, the reality is often you really need to kind of bridge between the two, and it takes a very careful planning to incrementally move from point A to point B and get people there without being too disruptive. So we try to do that. If we do something new, try to make it easy for customers to move. So that could be a guide that says, okay, if currently this expression needs to be replaced with this expression to use this new technology, or possibly even a porting tool if that makes sense. Before coming back to Cincom, I was a customer. Before that, ObjectStudio and Park Place. But one of the things I learned when you want to try to use some new technology in the product, when you go up to management and try to justify moving to that, if it's not something significant that management can understand, they may say no. So if you go to them and say, well, I want to rewrite all this maintenance work, and they'll say, well, what's the benefit that I'm going to see? Is what they'll say to me. And if you tell them nothing, then the answer is no. So if we're going to make customers change, make it worth it. Make it worth it so they can go to their management and say, well, yeah, if you let me do this work, you're going to see this and this and this. And then they're much more likely to approve that work or that porting work being done. What are some other goals? Another goal of mine, I'm very interested in growing Smalltalk in general, and Cincom Smalltalk obviously more specifically, but how do we help grow the Smalltalk community? Well, one way is to continue to improve the product, continue to invest in the product, so people's perception about is Smalltalk dead or is Smalltalk resurging, they can come up with the right answer. Smalltalk advocacy, which I'll get into in this presentation. Bringing in new technologies, exciting technologies like Seaside. Additional new products that are based on some proven technology, like Web Velocity that I'll talk about. And also just getting the product into people's hands. And we have the non-commercial version, so anybody can download it and learn it. So how do we make changes in the product? Where does the product input come from? And for the last, we're planning for our next generation of the products. We talked to customers and got a lot of ideas about what the customer's pain is, what they'd like to see in the product, and then also took a lot of those discussions internally. We'll both find out what our own engineers thought, where should we go, but also how do we solve the problems that the customers have? What are some solutions? And also discussing these things with the Smalltalk community. Got lots of great ideas. Some of you may have seen the way I tried to get some of this information back at the beginning of the year. It was called 9 for 09. And basically I had three questions in 3 categories that I was looking for. Give me 3 things that we should fix, refine, or replace in the product. Give me 3 things we should add. And give me 3 innovative ideas. Areas where we could maybe come up with something great and new and kind of lead the field in. And then later I also said, okay, here's a bonus 3. Tell me 3 things that you don't use that we could remove and help simplify or or streamline the product. So I got all kinds of great ideas and information, some very high level, and have to go back and say, okay, give me more specifics. Some very low level, so I have to go back and say, okay, kind of what problem are you trying to solve with the solution you're giving me, and try to figure these things out. So I've kind of summarized some of the things that we heard. So what did they tell us? What did we hear? One of the first things was, you know, make the product more modern, make it look more modern. Looks a little bit old now, and we need some significant changes, and this was common to both VisualWorks and ObjectStudio. Some other issues, especially in large installations, was using Store. You know, I've used Store for years, and in a relatively small shop, had a few hiccups occasionally, but overall it was a pretty good solution and worked really well for us. But in talking to some very large installations, they had some instances where they could use better performance, where they wanted the merge tool to be more robust, especially in merging different offshoots of the work and bringing them back together. And an area that we're lacking, especially if they came from an NV background, would be in configuration management. Our fonts. We have a font system that was pretty state-of-the-art when it first came out, and now we can do better. So we want improvements in how to make choices, sizing, specifying and matching which font to use. More capable font rendering. Another very big one, internationalization. We have some internationalization work that's been going on for quite a while, but we need to take some more significant steps for several large customers that have deployed these applications globally. And they want to penetrate many more markets with their Smalltalk-based applications. So this is good to hear, because it means they're doing well and want to penetrate more markets. What else? Some things we started working on are still important. VM is DLL, which makes it easier to use this solution in a multi-technology environment. Kind of in the past, if you use VisualWorks, for example, it kind of wanted to be the center of the universe. And you could talk to other things, but it didn't necessarily play well as a peer in those environments. So VM as DLL, or shared object, makes it play better as a peer in a multi-technology solution environment. So we hope things like this will help people, or developers who want to use it, bring it in for a small piece where they can communicate easily with other technologies. And then hopefully once they've proven its success, they can expand the usage. So we hope this will really help. Improvements in our C interface, speed, and the tools to use that are still of importance. Other ideas, multi-core CPUs are becoming ubiquitous, and that's just going to increase. So we're working on ideas to be able to leverage multi-cores, because not only is it important to be able to leverage those, it's also a really attractive idea in talking to customers and potential customers. And there's many ways to solve that, some simple, some controversial and difficult. So we'll be looking at that to see what kind of things we can bring forward for our customers. So that's what we heard when we did our planning and said, okay, here's the resources we have, what are really, really important, and what are we going to go forward with. So we kind of categorize things, the high priority, and some internal thing. And I'm going to go through some of these quick. There's a number of advocacy things that I want to get into, so I won't spend a whole lot of time with these, but if you have questions, please come talk to me later in the conference. So this is our list of high priority items. Our internationalization work, and we're looking at CLDR as a potential solution for that. Our 64-bit VM support. we did some 64-bit VM work starting a couple of years ago. And there wasn't too much usage, but a lot of customers, a number of customers are scaling up their planning and planning to use 64-bit operating systems and want the address space that a 64-bit VM will give them. I told you one of the major themes that we heard is modernization. So we have a number of improvements that we're planning for the product to address that from many different angles. And one, I think last year, if you were here at ESUG last year, I think Travis demonstrated his work in Cairo. And we're going to go forward, and we're going to go forward with that technology for being able to render much more impressive graphics. Our GUI infrastructure work, we're going to improve that. Kind of, it's been with the Pollock initiative that we've had. That's kind of been put on the side burner for a long time. And we have a lot of great ideas about how to improve this going forward. So we're addressing those. Graphics design work, and that means the icons and the logos of the product. We're working with professional graphics designers to refresh these areas, and it's looking pretty good. Question?
Yeah, my hair stand up a little bit when you say professional graphics designers. I had some problems with the change of buttons, for instance, a couple of years ago in the debugger. Will this kind of professionals be for the graphical, making it look nice, or for the making it usable? Is a bit of a distinction between the two?
Well, we really hope both.
Well, maybe best explain the new debugger buttons. For me, at least, the way my eyes work and work when I'm not looking at buttons, but I want to click them. They turn out to be one bar triangle, haze. It's like. So.
We haven't gotten to that part, but I'm also very interested in exactly that area because the debugger icons, which have changed in 2 or 3 times in the past year, and they kind of had to go back and learn them. That's actually one of the areas that I'm interested in seeing what we can do and what the professional designers can come up with to impart what we're trying to do there. So I'm interested. We haven't gotten to that part yet. We're working on the product logos right now, but that's one of the future areas we'll be addressing. So I'm also interested in seeing how that comes out. And yeah, we want it to be obvious and intuitive and attractive. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And the whole idea is to improve it so it's not so difficult. ObjectStudio 8 will get an update in its GUI and use modern Windows widgets. There's also work in the modeling tools to bring them up to where they the functionality of the classic versions, and then also do some work at extending those and making it more powerful. Shadow loading to make loading more capable and tolerant. More of an atomic load, so you can load it all and instead of little by little, and then as pieces are not there that are needed, it causes difficulty at times. C interface speed, high load threading safety, like with high communication with sockets or grid solutions. Better delays. There's instances where if you have very long-running delays, and for example, daylight savings time kicks in and changes the clock, that can be disruptive in the use of longer-term delays. And you may have seen some of the discussions recently on the forums on delays. Those are the high priority. This is the list. Another, and if you look at these lists, I mean, when I look at these lists, I say if we get this work done, the next release will be one of the most significant releases for this line of Smalltalk in maybe ever. So we're working on some very aggressive schedule and a lot of improvements, significant improvements in the product. Working on mapping tools for ObjectStudio 8, for being able to provide a zero setup installation for our new product I'll talk about later, Web Velocity, available on Amazon, cloud computing. And I mentioned leveraging multi-core earlier. That's also something that made the list. We're looking at what improvements we can make there. So that's, you've heard where we are now, where we're headed, and the third thing I want to talk to you about is, okay, how can we grow Smalltalk? How can we move Smalltalk forward? I mentioned my job is to help Smalltalk move forward in general, and Cincom Smalltalk in particular. So one of the things is making information available, the right information. Talk about what that is. Why? Well, the first thing is I found in James and Suzanne and I have gone out over the last year and had a lot of discussions with customers. And one theme that came up again and again when we discussed some of this information with them, they said, give us those slides, because some customers get pressure from management about why aren't you using C#? And the CEO read an article about such and such technology, and why aren't we using that instead? What is this Smalltalk thing? So helping educate them and letting them know it's a safe, powerful choice that a lot of people are having great successes with is important for our current customers when they get that kind of pressure. Another thing is to let past users who maybe used it in the 90s when it was kind of on a strong upward curve and moved away maybe when Java kind of made a sweep into the marketplace because where they were pushed into that by management. Well, we want to let them know it's safe now to get back in the water. And of course, I want to grow the Smalltalk community. And so we want to attract new people, and we have to consider how to do that. The perception is changing in Smalltalk, and we see that in a number of ways. This is, this isn't a 12-point font. I'll just tell you about what this is. This is from the Gartner Group, and it's how they categorize languages in one of 4 categories. Those 4 categories are adult, mature, aging, and elderly. This is from December 2007. Prior to this, they listed Smalltalk as elderly. And if you if you're somebody you're a manager who's looking at choosing a technology, and you went to Gartner's thing, basically elderly says, run from this as fast as you can. If you're using it now, get off of it. It was very bad. But the perception is changing. With talking to companies like Cincom Instantiations, it's persuaded them it is now listed as mature. Mature technology, which means it's safe. Our recommendations are move up to the current release of this. So if you work for a big organization that they buy this research and they go by this research, and if it says run, they will use it or they will run from it. Now it says run towards it. So it's a very good thing. The perception is changing. Another thing I can see with the number of attendees that are here at ESUG is growing significantly. That's a good thing. Interest and perception is changing. So I mentioned making information available. What other information can we make available to people? Well, one thing is the whole story of where Smalltalk came from. I mean, we don't even discuss it anymore because it's so ingrained in us. But there's a whole new generation of managers and developers that don't know this. They don't know where it came from. Discuss what differentiates Smalltalk from those other technologies. I've got a list you can use. And also, I consider Smalltalk to be into its second surge now. It's coming back, and we need the curve is going upward, and I want to help accelerate that curve and support that curve moving forward. It is a great time to be in Smalltalk. From more evidence from Cincom, we see that our clients are expanding their use and increasing their licenses. We're picking up brand new customers to Smalltalk. If you look out in the marketplace, there's new interest in Smalltalk. There's new implementations of Smalltalk, like Six Smalltalk, Iron Smalltalk, things that were influenced by Smalltalk, like I/O, Ruby, even Python. You see new experimental languages, like there will be a talk this week about Newspeak. And Newspeak, I think, is very interesting. It's borrowing at even deeper levels from Smalltalk, so it's something significant. It says that this technology is right. It's a wonderful foundation basis for new work going forward. About the legacy of Xerox PARC, I've talked to, over the last 6 months, I've talked to a number of groups who are not familiar with Smalltalk. And I said, look at the computer in front of you. What do you see on that computer? Well, I move the mouse, and I look at icons. I can drag and drop things. There's windows. There's a graphical user interface. And some people don't know that it came from Xerox PARC, and they had all this stuff in the mid-'70s. And all this stuff was pioneered there. And even fewer know that this work was done, all this invention was done in a language called Smalltalk. And you can see their jaws dropping. I didn't know that. They're not aware of the significance, basically, of how this is the technology that invented modern computing, or computing that we take for granted every day. And a lot of times that's enough. Just making them aware of that is, okay, enough for them to take a deeper look. You've attracted their attention. They're going to take a deeper look at the technology that had such a profound impact on modern computing. Another thing we probably all know, but we don't think about too often, is the office metaphor. We have a desktop that we work on. We have files, and that office metaphor also came from Xerox PARC, with kind of an office focus. Yes?
You see, the problem is that when you present that, especially to new people, this is not because people invented some stuff 20 years ago that it's sexy now. And that's really a key problem, is that I think that for me, the legacy of Xerox, you show it only to the people that are interested in history. Because now if you go to a new PHP developer, they don't care. The mouse, oh, you're okay, that's cool, they did that. Yes, this is a museum. We don't live in a museum. So I think that what we should end up, I don't have the solution, but I pay really attention. Normally in my presentation, I even remove the slides where I said that they were dreaming on the keyboard, on the laptops and things like that. Of course, these people, they were visionary, but we are in 2010, and this is not what we want to say. This is not a museum. So that's my take on that.
I understand what you're saying on that. I mean, there's a fine line you have to walk there. The message isn't so much that this has happened all so long ago, but it didn't invent one great thing that impacted modern computing, but so many things. But also, then I think probably the point you want to bring forward is there's modern versions of this that are up to date. Can use the internet, which was really took off much after that. Or again, this is to get their, to pique their interest, to draw them into the wonderful design of the language. And it's going to be time tested. I mean, Lisp was it 1949? I mean, I fully expect in 50 years from now, we'll see Smalltalk or some close derivatives of it out there. Why? Because fantastic design, a tremendous amount of time and effort to make a time-tested design that'll be around for a long time. Actually, I'll get into some more things with that about what's special about Smalltalk. So a lot of people don't know the rich history. How is Smalltalk different? One of the things that was built in a research lab for over 10 years. They made iterations every 2 years, well, as Alan Kay said, burning the disk packs. They threw away everything, so they didn't have to count on legacy. How many other languages had that opportunity? They were not accountable at providing an income or a return on investment for over a decade at Xerox PARC. How many languages have that opportunity and the right people working on that? These kind of conditions are very rare. That's one of the reasons it's so special. How else is Smalltalk different? Productivity. Smalltalk, really, if you want to explain to people, there's specialized things like a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet is very productive for doing spreadsheet things. That's a narrow thing. But the thing is, with Smalltalk, it gets the productivity at those kinds of levels for specialty things, but it's general purpose. So highly productive. So maybe, as companies have to cut back, maybe that's a better reason for them to look at Smalltalk, because it's very productive. Big return on investment. You can get a lot done with a few people. The elegance of the language, the pioneering, I mentioned all those things that it invented, but I mean, there's more modern things it invented. Design patterns, wikis, unit testing work, all things that came from Smalltalkers. They used Java. Well, who did the JIT work for Java? They got Smalltalkers to do that stuff. They use some other environments. There's a lot of modern environments that were done or influenced by Smalltalk. Our VisualWorks is cross-platform, making it easy for them to develop on one, deploy on others. As we know, the Smalltalks come with full source code, meaning that if they wanted to do something different, they're not stuck if the provider didn't provide a solution for some niche thing that they want. They can go do it themselves. They're not at the mercy of somebody. Well, please do this for us. They can do it themselves if they want the IDE or something specific in the environment to behave a certain way. Enjoyment, better retention of employees because they like coming to work each day. And again, it's broadly applicable. Another thing is, just get the product in their hands. I tell people, just learn it. One of the repeating messages, consistent messages, is I'll hear a developer come up and tell me, well, I learned Java first, and I thought I knew object-oriented, but then later I learned Smalltalk, and I didn't realize, that it wasn't until I learned Smalltalk that I really got object-oriented. Or by learning Smalltalk, I really had a solid foundation for even working in these other things, because I really saw what it really meant, how it was originally designed. So even if they tell you, well, my management says no Smalltalk, it's a big advantage just to know the technology. And of course, the more people that are exposed to Smalltalk technology, some of them will love it and they'll grow the community. They'll be converts. They'll think this is the greatest thing. So maybe they want to use it for proof of concept work. You know, this is all just getting your foot in the door. The more people that know this technology, the better it is for Smalltalk and the Smalltalk community. I had said the last time when I gave a similar presentation that Smalltalk was ahead of its time. And somebody corrected me. They said, no, it still is ahead of its time. So a lot of things, Smalltalk, it kind of was ahead of the hardware, a little too early on the hardware curve. A lot of things in Smalltalk were not appreciated. Well, more and more of those things are being appreciated as dynamic languages are becoming hot. Smalltalk's a great dynamic language. And I'll talk about it too in a couple of slides. Other languages borrowed the obvious things from Smalltalk. Object-oriented is a huge improvement, and lots of languages took the object-oriented concepts and grafted them onto their language. So people could, they could use a syntax they're familiar with and get those significant benefits of object-oriented. But there's a whole lot of other benefits in Smalltalk that were overlooked. So what are those? And as I mentioned, I fully expect in 50 years, Smalltalk will be around. It's simply too well designed. An analogy I like to tell about the story about when Steve Jobs visited Xerox PARC. And actually these quotes are from a documentary that was done called Triumph of the Nerds. And these are quotes from Steve Jobs, and he said, I was so, they showed me three things, but I was so blinded by the graphical user interface that's what inspired him to do the Lisa and the Macintosh computers. And we know the impact that had on computing. So, by analogy, well, people were impacted by Smalltalk and they borrowed from it, but what did they miss? Steve Jobs was shown three things. He only saw one. Other languages saw many things. In Smalltalk, they mostly focused on OO. What did they miss? So here's some things that are, they're becoming more aware of that are powerful features in Smalltalk that were somewhat overlooked, or they're not able to implement them as well in other languages because of the very good design in Smalltalk. One of those is closures. Closures kind of bring a lot of the magic to Smalltalk. Another thing out here is, well, such and such language that I use, every 2 years they're revising the language. It's modern. Smalltalk hasn't changed. It's old. And one of the things I like to point out is, because of the way it was designed, you can do things like add new control structures to Smalltalk without redefining the language. So they don't need to, make the language hugely verbose. They don't need to change the language to add new control structures. It has evolved, even significantly, over the years. There are new control structures in Smalltalk. Reflection. We're seeing in the market in general, even specifically on things like Seaside and Rails for Ruby on Rails, those are metaprogramming frameworks. And metaprogramming, a lot of people think metaprogramming is a big, important new direction where we're going to be seeing a lot of great things. We're seeing some very interesting things like Seaside. And metaprogramming relies heavily on reflection. The Smalltalk model for reflection is very good. And that the consistency in its implementation, Smalltalk turtles all the way down, is also a big advantage. So as that becomes more important, Smalltalk is a wonderful platform and choice for doing that kind of work. And here's one of the interesting ones, the syntax. I've always been amazed, people will graft the Smalltalk ideas and graft them to some other more arcane syntax. I think largely because of familiarity. They're familiar with the syntax that they're familiar with, and some is resistance to change. But the syntax in Smalltalk, I think, is one of the biggest advantages. It was designed to be easy and natural for people. That was the goal. The syntax was very simple. I've heard some people, coming from other languages, multi-part keyword messages are difficult. And I have it says thanks Neil. I think this was an idea that Neil had put out about, well, here's a memo in English, and everybody will understand that. Well, this is what it is in Smalltalk. Pretty natural, not so difficult. So maybe if we take a different approach with people coming from other languages, it might be simpler in some cases like this. Maybe they're coming from the wrong perspective. There's also cultural differences, and we need to communicate some of those cultural differences with people in advocating Smalltalk. One of those is in debugging. You'll hear somebody come home that's been using some C-based language, and they come home and say, oh, today was awful. I spent the whole day in the debugger. And being in the debugger means things went horrible. Things are very bad. Things broke left and right. It's a bad place to be. Whereas a Smalltalker will come home and say, I spent all day in the debugger. It was fantastic. I wrote half my application in the debugger. And it's instant gratification. You can write the code, bing, test it right there, right in place. Not right, you're right there. It's a live environment. You need to promote that more as not a debugger, a bad place, but a live environment, which is a good and wonderful place to be. Also, an interesting thing is tools. I think some of the people in here may have seen the discussion. I put a question out on VWNC, I think a month and a half ago. And it was somebody's perspective, because I'm always thinking about ideas. How do you get people from other technologies into Smalltalk? How do you make that bridge shorter? And some people have this notion of, well, my code editor, that's pure and good, and being in an environment like Smalltalk, it's so unfamiliar to them. So I put out the question, well, should we provide some better bridge there? And it was a very interesting discussion. But if you don't use the tools that Smalltalk has, you miss out on a whole lot. So I'm not quite sure how we bridge some of that perception of some people that are fully built on file-based systems is, I don't know how to overcome that. I'm going to just have a few slides left. Running late. Snapshot using an image is like putting a notebook to sleep. That analogy can help. Lastly, Web Velocity. What is it? How is it different? Why should I care? And Web Velocity it's for developing web applications. Semi-analogous to like a Ruby on Rails, where you can quickly develop applications from the database to the browser. But how it does it is very different. And of course, what's in it? What is it made of? All proven, tested, successful technology. VisualWorks, the Seaside framework, the Glorp OR mapping framework. And by the way, note those two, Seaside and Glorp, we are officially supporting now. And we're adding a lot of infrastructure in to make it quick and easy, scaffolding work, active record, pattern support. Make all that possible. So here's a couple of, maybe a surprise. It's not for you. That may be a surprise. And it's software for your sister. And that may be very confusing. You may be thinking I'm suffering terribly from jet lag. Software for your sister? So it's not targeted, the Web Velocity product is not targeted directly at Smalltalkers. It's targeted at people who want to do web development, and their extent of using Smalltalk will be kind of in a scripting, and easy. If you want to do this, here's a pattern. They can script, and they're using Smalltalk And as they want to become more and more sophisticated, they will gradually move into Smalltalk. So where we think this is good is it will help grow and expand the Smalltalk community. And where this also might be helpful to you folks that are using Smalltalk, I told you it's not for you, but where you may be able to use it is suggest it to a sister organization that's not using Smalltalk. Because then if they adopt it and they become excited about this thing and later become Smalltalk advocates, that helps you, it helps the community. You're in a position to help them and also grow the use of Smalltalk within your organization. Which is important because sometimes Smalltalk groups and organizations, because they can get so much done with so few people, are small. And it's kind of ironic because of that, because it's so good, sometimes they lose political battles because, well, the C# group, they have 5 times the number of people, and they're lobbying more strongly, but we're getting much more done. So expanding the use can be very important. Briefly, what else it does is Web Velocity, selling Smalltalk. I was a sales support engineer in much of the 90s, and one of the big obstacles that you have is when you try to sell Smalltalk, you immediately force them into the position of choosing a language and deciding that this language is wonderful. And even if it's like asking somebody to change their religion. No matter what, it's always a lot of debate, a very difficult time. So things like Web Velocity, it bypasses the whole language wars. They're using a web technology, they're not choosing a language. So I consider this a stealth approach to the Smalltalk experience, where they can kind of gradually wade into the water and have good successes. So that can be recommended to sister organizations, other organizations that are non-Smalltalk community. And later this week, James Robertson will be giving a demonstration, I believe that's Thursday morning, on Web Velocity. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Any questions? Offline, if anybody has any questions, please go right here.
You said the community is getting bigger, the environment is getting bigger, and more customers, etc. What about more jobs for us?
Jobs first. Well, I think one will follow the other, or certainly should. I think there's who has they're trying to consolidate to one site for jobs.
That would be James Savage's blog. That would be James Savage's blog on our server.
He has a blog, and there's also a couple of sites trying to consolidate. Because a lot of times we hear from developers, there's no companies using Smalltalk, and the companies tell us there's no Smalltalk developers. So I think we need to be smarter and organized about how we join, help the two find each other.
On my page, I usually have one offer a month. This is the average. One, two offers a month. But I'm not seeking too much more offers, just collecting offers that I found amazing.
So then
There is other stuff.
Smalltalk job.
Anything else? Anything else? I'm standing between this and lunch.